Hello and welcome again to another YDA one-to-one chat. And today I'm going to be talking to Ram Madhvani, who is a director at and the co-owner of Equinox Films in India. Ram is one of the legendary directors in the industry. He's directed work for Happyden, multi-award-winning work, LMN, for Twitter, for Kindle, Amazon Kindle. He's directed feature films, documentaries, branded entertainment pieces, and is one of the most respected directors within the industry. And he's taken some time to talk to us today, which is fantastic. We talk about his route into the industry and the routes for aspiring directors. We talk about the need for advertising to be engaged in social issues, including climate change. We talk about humour and how that has worked for him, and how India uses its humour in advertising. We also talk about India still trying to find a voice within the advertising industry, and a whole host of other things. He's engaging and insightful, and hopefully you will enjoy the next little while of our chat. Ram Madhvani, welcome to the YDA one-to-one talk. It's great to have you. It's great to talk to you. Thank you for joining us from Bombay, I believe, is where you are currently. And we're really looking forward to talking to you over the course of this next 45 minutes or so. And I guess the first question I really want to ask you is, can you tell us, first of all, about how you got into directing? What was your route into the business, and how did you sort of want to become a director in the first instance?
Danny, I come from a generation where I was intoxicated by the smell of burning film.
Right, okay.
Some people get intoxicated by other kind of, sort of nefarious kind of, substances. But when I was in school, I was in a boarding school in St. Peter's, Panchgani. And in that school, every Saturday we used to have movies which were played to us in our assembly hall. So it wasn't a theater really. It was just a makeshift. The screen used to be put up, the 16mm projector used to be put up. And there used to be on Friday evenings, a big steel trunk which used to come with all the cans. And then they used to cut open, the packaging. And we used to all be there as little school kids, watching what movie is it going to be tomorrow, what are we going to be, and then there would be The Man from UNCLE, or there would be Laurel and Hardy, and it would be a Western. And obviously a lot of the time you couldn't understand the language because first of all, the print was bad and the sound was, so if there was, so, that was the American drawl. But, and then obviously the projector used to go, and then it used to burn, and there was this big burn there on the screen. And then, somebody had to go and splice that. And then, we'd do, and everybody, the whole assembly hall would go, oh, and then that smell of burning film, which obviously in the earlier days, because it was made out of inflammable material, you couldn't even take it on a train, for those people who remember those times. And this therefore shows my age, but I'm actually 18. But yeah, that was it. It was from that time, I think, that the smell of burning film must have got into my systems and my cell. And so from age 16, I've been wanting to be a film director. If you ask anybody in school, what would you like to be? I would say I want to be a filmmaker. I have, I think, one of the rare people who had the privilege of knowing.
Right. And so how did people react to that? When you said, I want to be a film director, did they just kind of...
Well, no, the thing is that you're obviously being a filmmaker, as far as my family was concerned, my mother was a widow. My father expired when I was very young. There are three brothers in our home, my eldest brother. And the difference between me and my eldest brother is about 9, 10 years old. I have a middle brother. And what happened was that, obviously, when you say that you want to get into the film business, because it's so volatile and it's so sort of, it's not a regular job. It's not what in India, you say, the boy is settled now. He's settled. Okay. So that's a concept which means that, okay, you've got a regular job. You've got your money is going to be coming in. You have hopefully a home because of the money coming in, all the things that make us settled. But obviously, the life of a filmmaker is not a settled life, though that's obviously we are settled in a way, but we are not really settled. So the family did get hassled, and therefore for a while I was in college, and I obviously did theatre when I was in college, and in the evenings we used to have Alliance Française and the British Council, and the American Council. They used to all have movies from everybody, from Godard to Truffaut to Satyajit Ray to. So in the evenings, that's what I used to do. But in the daytime, I had to leave college to earn a living because my mother being a widow, I had to pitch in to the home, and so I did. I sold carpets for a while. I sold milk for a while. I even went into diamonds because my eldest brother was into diamonds.
Right.
My middle brother then became a photographer. That helped me a huge deal because then the family said, "Oh, okay." And then my brother said, "Why don't you come to New York?" Because he had settled there, and he said that if you come and work with me in my office, which is a diamond sorting kind of office with polished stones and rough stones and all this and that. And I said, okay, I'll come provided I can go to film school in the evening. And then, so I was in NYU in the School of Continuing Education. And then I think the family finally said, this man, just let's give up on him. Let's let him just go and join. And then what happened was they said, okay, but conditions. Okay, this is conditions apply. Join advertising because it's not the big bad world of feature film. It's the big ad world. And then obviously we knew somebody, and so I went to that company. That company was called Equinox,
right.
And I joined as a trainee. And my guru Shomantro Ghoshal, who was one of the partners of the company, then in 2 years' time actually offered me a partnership.
Wow.
And so it was like suddenly it all like, and now I own Equinox along with my wife Amita. And Shomantro is in a way chairman emeritus, and he no longer makes commercials.
Yeah.
So that's in 2 minutes. That's my life story. I also met my wife in Equinox, and it was an office romance. That's not allowed nowadays, but that's what it was. That's what it was then.
How much did you know about advertising then? When someone said to you, don't go to features, go to advertising, what was your reaction to that? Did you think, I don't know what that is, or I kind of...
No, I knew. I mean, I knew because we're all film geeks, right? So you know everything about and there were a lot of feature filmmakers obviously also making ads, and so there were 2 or 3 directors, feature film directors that I'd wanted to join, and I would have liked to have joined. And at the same time, when you're at that age, you're just happy that you got a job. The first job I got, and I tease the people who I got my first job from, there was a company called Far Productions, and I got my first job with them as a trainee. And after 10 days, I think they decided that, okay, they don't need me anymore. I must have been terrible at my job. And I remember walking down from their office crying, actually, saying, my gosh, they actually told me to leave. And then I went and asked Genesis, which was a person called Prahlad Kakkar, who is really, both of these people are very respected and were very big, and people that I'm very fond of. And then Prahlad, I went to his office and asked for a job, and he, of course, had a dog in his office, and then the dog would come and sniff you all over. And then first time I went and Prahlad wasn't there, and then the second time and the third time, the fourth time and the fifth time, and Prahlad is not there. And then I now call him Yoda. And he's got a big beard, and he's a wise man. And at that time he was the maverick kind of Stetson wearing, commercial director. And so then one day he came into the office and he said, where are you going? And I said, no, I'm just waiting for a job, He said, okay, come with me. And then he took me down in the taxi and he took me to some suburb where he was going. And in the taxi, he said, so what do you want to be? And so I said, I just wanted a job with you. So no, you don't have to join me. What you should do is you should join Equinox. I think Equinox will give you a better, and so actually it was him who said, go and ask them for a job. And I was just so relieved that I could get a job so I could get some earnings,
Yeah.
And like all of us, right?
So when you joined Equinox and you started your career, was it hard to get into that get onto that path in the terms of joining a kind of respected production company and becoming part of a team, or was there fewer people, fewer kind of directors out there, so there wasn't quite so much competition?
Well, no, I was a trainee, right? And there was just two directors. There was Shumon Thro and there was Dilip Ghosh. They were both partners. And then and as a trainee then, and because at that time there was no bifurcation of jobs, you just did everything.
Right.
You did casting, you swapped the floor, you sort of mopped whatever you needed to mop. And then I had also made short films in NYU when I was there. And they saw the short film that I'd made. And I think they also realized that at least I was a film geek. I had seen everything that there was to see. And I think that they must have seen something in me, and I must have been of some help and use. So that after a couple of years, Shumon Thro, for instance, started giving me work, which he then started telling agencies, try and give him a little, smaller work, which I started. I was, at that time, when you're young, you do, the glory of being a director does get to you. And I think I was quite an arrogant kind of a person at that time, from what I'm told. And I remember once in one of my sort of commercials that I was doing with a very senior DOP, and my partner Shumon Thro knew him, and they had worked very well together. And then because, so Shumon Thro said, let Ram be guided by the very senior DOP.
Yeah.
And the senior DOP went and put a tripod and the camera. We were shooting in a steel mill, and he put the camera there, and I just screamed at him, and I said, how dare you put a camera without asking me? And, what's wrong with you? And he said, but Ram, I'm just trying to help you make your film. That's all I'm doing. And oh gosh, it was so embarrassing, the behavior of my own behavior. And till this date, this must have happened over 20, 25 years ago. But I still remember the look in his eye. And obviously we are friends now, and I've worked with him very often. And when I keep apologizing, now I say I'm just too old for arrogance. I can't deal with arrogance anymore. Yeah.
But do you think that's potentially a kind of a thing of youth? If you're coming through, if you're just kind of starting your career, authority and respect comes from shouting at people and being sort of,
I think that there is a certain cowboy kind of attitude that you feel, or I felt at that time, that is what would give it the aura, and that would give it the kind of glory. And also, after a while, the work was good. It wasn't as if the work was bad. Plus, I had at a certain point won my first Cannes for a commercial which was for an organ donation commercial. And I remember coming back, and I just spent 2 minutes giving you an anecdote about the price of arrogance, because I think it's very important for, I'm sure today, certainly I don't think arrogance really doesn't quite exist as much as it used to at that time. But I remember going to accept my Cannes, the copy of the award, because I hadn't gone to Cannes to accept it. And the agency said, come in, we've asked for a copy, so, come in. And it was that big, the lion kind of statue, right? It's very heavy. So I was obviously, and they said, but listen, Ram, we also want to talk to you about your attitude. And I said, oh gosh, they're giving me this, and then now they're going to talk to me about my attitude. And they said, the problem with you is that you're changing scripts, and, you think that because you want to be a visualist and you want to be a poetist, and, and I had all these notions in my head about the kind of director that I was. And I wasn't yet into my humanist kind of phase, I feel arrogant even talking like this, but still, can you imagine my blue period? And then, that was my poetess phase, and now I'm in a humanist phase. So they were, sort of fed up with me going on about this. And these are my friends, people that I work with. Yeah. But they said, okay, come on, we're going to give you this award, but we want to give you a, sort of talking to. And then on the way into their office, I remember there was a beggar lady that came running up at me. She was wearing khaki clothes, and she was sort of had this hairstyle, it was very short hair and a lot of dirt on her face. And suddenly I'm walking towards their office and there's there's a little pavement there. And she comes running at me. And so I just ignore her, okay? Because that's what you do when, somebody strange, dangerous looking sort of comes running at you, you put your head down and you say, okay, just ignore this person. And then that lady picked up a branch which was on the pavement. She picked it up and she hit me hard on my face over here. And I just put my hand like this and I said, and thankfully I did that because then it hit me on my shoulder and on my elbow. And I was smarting, with tears, and I was in pain. But she then dropped the branch and ran away. And I again behaved ostrich-like as if nothing had happened. Right, because this was the most embarrassing thing that would, that could happen to you on the street. And with, I could see a couple of people in their cars laughing at what had happened, and I just ignored all of this and I behaved as if nothing had happened, and I didn't even wince in pain. And I went into the bathroom of the agency and I washed my face and I was in tears. And then they gave me the award, and then they obviously also said, but hey Ram, listen, your attitude and this is the kind of person you're becoming and all the rest of that. And then and I kept thinking, why is it at that particular moment, how is it that this lady, was she a copywriter whose script I may have torn up some point? Was she a creative director? Was she a client? I don't know who this lady was. Why did God send me this epiphany in a way? And it was an epiphanous moment, obviously. And 6 months later, I realized, and I kept thinking about this, and then I realized, maybe this was a lady sent to actually thwack me on the head anytime that I became arrogant. Right. And and now every time that I'm, we are in a bit of a United Nations kind of committee work, right? There is the client, there is the agency, there's the director, there's all of us. We're in a way, we're a United Nations. I'm Kofi Annan sometimes, or I'm Buthrus Ghali, right? Okay, so that's who I am, and there is no space for arrogance in our work. Yeah. Of course, there is creative arrogance, but that does not mean that there has to be a sort of behavioral arrogance. Yeah. And now, and that lady, therefore, every time that that lady comes and hits me metaphorically, every time that I begin to feel of a certain way. And I think that really helped me change my attitude. And it was, I think, the universe came and gave me a message.
So she's like the physical embodiment of your conscience. When you
Yes. Yes. My conscience is obviously a beggar lady who's, sort of... Well, it's a good way now. Now I know what my conscience looks like. Yes.
So in terms of your route into the industry was, as you just explained, the route for people these days, for aspiring directors, do you think that is more difficult, less difficult? Do you think there seems to be a lot more people that have access? Obviously, the technology is much more available to people to become a director. You need a phone and a laptop essentially to be a studio. Do you think it's harder now for directors to kind of find their way and kind of find recognition than it was 10 years ago, I suppose you could argue? Is it more difficult?
Well, given the amount of sort of show reels, though they're not really now in the physical form that they used to be, that agencies are saying that, oh, look, the amount of directors' work that we have to see and wade through, and given the number of production houses that there are, I would say, yes, it's far more difficult today because to try and get work, it was difficult then too, but I think that there's just many more people in the pond. And therefore, I think that with 500 of us, it's obviously, plus I think that the very nature of commercial making has changed. The fast shelf life of commercials, the fact that the idea that commercials, there are commercials that I have made that have yet remained in people's memory. And I find that therefore, because of the let's get this out fast kind of attitude, there is more work, but the work is not as long lasting. And therefore reputations are not made because the work makes the reputation. And therefore the last generation, and thankfully I am trying very hard to be last generation and next generation, and yet making commercials and yet getting work. And I just did Twitter last year, I've done Kindle. So I'm yet making it happen, and we call ourselves the youngest, oldest production house. But a lot of the time now it is also, okay, how long you need to do it in so much time, and you need to do it in so much money. And you know what? That's fine. We'll embrace that. And even now, post-COVID budgets and all of that, because I think that's the only way that you can survive if you really want to be out there. You know, when we were kids, we used to say, in school, we used to say, and I tell all my young directors, and I tell myself all the time, which is if you used to play, cricket, which was like street cricket, right? Not like, in a field or whatever, but just outside your school or in the corridor of your, outside your classroom. And if you you'd say, you want to play cricket. Otherwise, take your ball, go away.
Right.
So this is it. This is what it is. It's no longer a gentleman's game.
Yeah.
This is T20, man. You have to get out there and you have to play with the bouncer, and you have to get out there and you have to keep at it. So I think that, yes, the game has changed for sure. I did a commercial for T20 last year for IPL, and the tagline was, the baseline was, game banaye a name, which is that your game makes your name.
Right.
And a lot of the time what happens is that once your name is made, you believe that your name is actually making your name. No, sir. Your game makes your name. And if you don't keep at the game and reinventing the game, you don't have a name. Right. Because it's only your game that actually makes your name.
So for directors coming through the ranks and sort of coming into the business at the moment, your advice, I guess, would be just to shoot, right? Just to kind of do the job, do the best of your ability and try.
Well, yes, obviously, I think that what happens is that, for instance, we have a director's assistant with us, and his parents said, okay, he's been to film school for a year, and now we're thinking that we should send him to film school again for another year. This was obviously before the lockdown, etc. And I said to them, no, I don't think you should send him to film school, because let's presume that the expense of that education is going to be in Indian rupees terms, at least 50 lakhs to 1 crore of rupees, which is a lot of money. And I said, to send him to college, and so that he can then, I would much rather that you take that money and you spend that money making him a showreel. He can go out there and shoot it. And then, because once he comes back from college, he's yet going to have to join somebody, and he's going to again climb up the whole thing all over again. And then he's yet going to have to show people that he can do work. Why are you going to film school? Take that money, make your film. If you're a film geek, you should already have seen everything and read everything in any case. And there is so much now available. That spend that money and make your own showreel. And then talent will out. They will see. And you know what will happen? You'll keep chiseling your craft and you'll keep learning at it, because that's the other thing about what we are. We are in the crafts business, so you get better the more you practice it. Spend the money practicing. And then once you practice and then you show people, they will say, like we had a young director with us who made his own little short film, which is obviously just another ladder that, one way that you can show people your work or your music video. We had another director, Sandeep Modi, who's with us, and he did a short film, which was about 3-4 minutes. And immediately when Manoj, my producer, went to show it to the agency, they said, there's some good human work here. I think we'd like to use this guy. He knows how to tell a story and he knows his human work. And so, I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Education will only get you so far, I suppose. You have to sort of be out in the world. But then in terms of your own career, we'll talk a bit about your commercials in a bit, but you've also shot features, 2 at least, I think, certainly, short films, and a documentary, I think, in the not too distant past on Amitabh Bachchan. Is that it?
Amitabh Bachchan, yes.
So you've obviously sort of dipped your toe into different kind of areas of filmmaking. How advertising was your first sort of approach to filmmaking, right? What was that taught you about then moving into features, documentaries?
Okay, I'll just raise my collars for a minute before I sort of settle down on that a little. Yes, I have. I've made an indie movie called Let's Talk, which was in English. Yeah. It was mainly 2 people in a room, which we made with our own money. It cost us the cost of 1 bedroom, and my son, we were in a 1.5 bedroom house, and I asked my wife, because my son's feet were growing out of his bed, and the idea was either we could move into a 2 bedroom house rather than a 1.5 bedroom house, or I could spend it on the movie. And she said, let's spend it on the movie. Right. And we made that of our own money, and then it got a lot of fame and claim and due. But it was an indie movie, right? It didn't get me into the commercial kind of space. And then many years later, which was about 4 years ago, I made another movie, which is called Neerja, which got me the national award, which is a huge thing, because the President of India gives it to you. It was the best Hindi feature film that was there in that year. And therefore, we got in that a lot of critical and commercial success. It was also the highest return of investment movie made that year. And therefore, people began, there's nothing like success when it comes to, any feature film activity, as we know. And then just last month, we released a 9-episode show for Disney Plus Hotstar, which is an OTT platform, which is also from Equinox, but now in a company called Madhvani Films, which is Equinox and Madhvani in any case, because we own Equinox, and therefore I thought Equinox would be for advertising and Madhvani Films would be for features. But meanwhile, I go around telling everybody in advertising that no, that wasn't the same Madhvani, that was somebody else, because I only make ads, because as soon as people in advertising think, he's only interested in movies, and then they stop giving me work. So I do a lot of backtracking. The other day when I was working with the Spotify client, they said, we loved Arya, which is the name of the show that we did. We loved it, and we saw it with our parents, and it was so nice. And I said, no, I haven't made that. I'm doing commercials. So no, it's been the 3 things that I have learned. Sorry.
It's out now, though. You just admitted that on camera.
Yeah. So, but the 3 things that I have learned in advertising, actually, I owe advertising a lot. I owe it, obviously, because I met my wife there. A lot of my friends are there. Mm-hmm. My work ethic comes from advertising. If we commit to a deadline, people work to that deadline. If you say that your commercial is going to come out, we haven't missed a single presentation date. We are proud to say, in the God knows how many hundreds, thousands of commercials that we've made at Equinox, we have never missed the presentation date. And we say, and therefore, all of this plus the 3 things that I learn and which I apply into the other work that I do, whether it's a documentary on Mr. Amitabh Bachchan or whether it is a music video or whatever. It was on that I learned, and I am learning yet. One, I think advertising teaches you what to say. That's very important, because we are always told what do you want to say. And in feature films also, therefore, I say, what am I saying with this? 2 is, how am I saying it? And that comes into tone of voice and pitch and all the rest of that. And most importantly, number 3 is, how should it make you feel? And I think that this 3rd thing, how should it make you feel, is a beautiful thing, because now when I present a commercial, I know that the client will always bring in the other people who are in the office after you present the commercial, and the secretary may come in, or the accountant may come in, or some other team may come in, and there will be 20, 30 people all standing there, and they'll be watching the ad, and the client will say, oh, what do you think? Nice, what do you all feel, And then those 20, 30 people will tell you what they feel about the commercial, and my job is to predict the expression on their faces. Right. Because that is really what that commercial is meant to do, forgetting what you're saying and how you're saying it. But most importantly, what is the feeling? And now I look forward to that. I can feel the energy. I want to say, I predicted the expression on the person when they saw that ad. And that's really, I now find myself in the business of feelings, in the business of emotions, in the business of, I alter your mood. And I feel that, therefore, what do I sell? What do I sell? I'm not selling that product. I'm selling, I'm in the business of selling emotions. So really, that is the big shift that has happened in my head now, from what do I say and how do I say. But very importantly, at the end of that commercial, we made a commercial for Twitter last year. And it's a tongue-in-cheek kind of commercial, but at the end of it, the hashtag has changed our life, right? And it's something which is so, that symbol is something which is so associated with social media and with Twitter, that we knew that, and it has led to so many movements, that from a story that was meant to be a small, charming story, it was meant to become, my gosh, look what this is. There is social change over here. And therefore, to know that at the end of that commercial, the expression that we had to predict, along with obviously Raj, who was from Leo Burnett, and the team that was there, and a lot of this is them. Like, I take no credit for any of this, but at least when we are having a conversation, we are talking about what is the feeling that we want to leave you with.
Yeah. Does that work as well for things like, so do the forms of feature film and documentary and commercial advertising filmmaking things come together in your, I watched, is it this Bloody Line, I think it's called?
Yes, yeah.
Is This Bloody Line a branded piece of content for the Times of India, or is it a standalone show?
No, so what happened was that there is a very important magazine and, in the publishing business, their name is India Today. Yeah. And they commissioned, they have a conclave every year where sometimes the Prime Minister comes, a lot of people from all across the world come. And as part of this conclave, they commissioned 2 or 3 filmmakers. It's very, very, very small money, but it's a big thing to be invited. And they therefore asked me to make a short film. And it was obviously on India today versus India tomorrow versus India yesterday. And I believe that the line of partition that Sir Cyril Ratcliffe was forced to draw within almost a 30-40 day period, where he wasn't even, he had never come to India. And it was a subject that fascinated me, along with a poem that was it T.S. Eliot who wrote the poem on partition and on Sir Cyril Ratcliffe. And therefore, I thought that may be a good short film to make. So it's a 9-minute film. It's available on the net. It's called This Bloody Line. And it's in English. It comes from a very different perspective about partition, which has obviously affected all of us in India and in Pakistan and across Southeast Asia. And therefore, it was something that I was passionate about and just wanted to speak about.
I mean, I watched it recently. I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I didn't know much about that sort of Cyril Ratcliffe and the line, so I started investigating it. The piece itself, so as a piece of film, it's really great, it's really intriguing and really, but because it was kind of associated with a kind of publishing house or a kind of thing, I think that the future of advertising is more, even the Twitter thing. So the Twitter ads, long, I think, if I'm right in remembering, and it tells a story, and it's obviously it's a commercial, but it feels like we're moving more towards the kind of branded content, the branded entertainment area of advertising, because that's what kind of hooks people in those stories. I mean, do you agree with that? Are you seeing more of that sort of work, and do you think that's what the future of advertising might look like?
Yes, and I think that we should do it. Earlier you had to hide product placement into movies. And then people would be upset that, oh, look, This is a branded kind of content which they're trying to. But please, I mean, so what? So what if he's driving that car? And so what if you showed that soft drink or whatever, that water in his hand? It's okay. First of all, it allows us to subsidize that movie, right? Which is a big thing. Secondly, it allows the client to actually get associated with certain moments which can get the product out there. And so I'm not a purist about these things, because eventually I do come from advertising. And therefore, I think that should be embraced. Right. The idea that branded content, the idea that if you're doing a music video, like in India, a lot of the time, what happens is that we make movies that are for the armchair tourist.
Right.
We make movies that are for the armchair shopper. So what's wrong there? Because people want to know, oh, she wore this for the wedding in that scene. Or I want to wear that for the wedding in that scene. And therefore, if that you can click on and say, what is that? How much did it cost? What's wrong with that? So no, I'm perfectly okay with all of this merging in a way in which I think we're all perfectly intelligent about these things. We know and we're okay with it. So I don't think we should be pure about these things.
No, sure. But do you think it still needs to be, there needs to be an element of authenticity to it? So, the products that are placed in films and the kind of associations that are made between products and films and brands or whatever it might be needs to feel true to whatever the script is or whatever. I think that's sometimes get upset is when like there's a sort of an obvious, hey, look, I'm drinking a Coke or whatever it might be, and it sort of feels a bit like it's been crushed.
No, I think what happens is that most people in advertising and marketing and movies know how to fool people, and therefore they don't do it that obviously. We are getting very good at doing it well. Yeah. I think maybe those were the earlier days when people were there, but we are very fast learners. We know how to do this in a way in which you don't even know how it's happening and how it's working. And so, no, I don't think that, but that is the way of the world, and that's fine. That's the way it's going to be. And that's what we chose to be in. And, we are in the commissioned business, right? I have foolishly believed that advertising is art. At its best, it is art. Mm-hmm. And whether you're commissioned, therefore, to do something, it depends on how well you do it. A lot of it is perishable stuff and a lot of it is bad and a lot of it may not work. But when it does, it works. We know that it reaches out, it becomes part of popular culture. And it's something which I'm very proud to be part of that business and part of that filmmaking culture, because it helps me connect with the audience and learn about how do I make it popular? How do I make it a hit? Because that's really, in terms of lingo, in India, certainly you say, hit ad a hit. Okay.
Yeah. So that's a good way to talk about some of your work. So, I mean, I guess my assumption is one of the things that you're most known for in the commercial world is the Happy Dent commercial.
It's all downhill. It's all downhill after that.
Well, that was, I started at Shots not that long before that commercial came out, and it was a massive sort of moment of come on, everyone, come on. It was so brilliantly done, and it was as close to art, I suppose, as you can get in terms of a commercial, and such physical kind of comedy. And funny enough, so this year the theme for the YDA is humour. We're talking to people a bit about humour, and that is a very funny commercial. And it's not sort of jokes, but the physicality of the comedy is really interesting. So firstly, can you tell us a bit about making that commercial? And secondly, does that sort of comedy play well in India, where it's not necessarily a joke or a punchline, but something that is funny? So again, I'm rambling slightly, but Man-Made Machine is another one that you've directed that is a kind of physically humorous thing, and the LMN Beach commercial, kind of visual humorous thing, or comedy that plays well in India.
Well, A couple of things. First, on Happy Dent, it's all Prasoon Joshi. It's respect his mind and what he does, and therefore, let me just say that I was just cussid in the execution of it. A lot of it is thanks to his mind and the poeticness of where his mind is, and somebody that I hugely respect and I'm fond of. So that's just to make sure that in the while I'm here sort of speaking about being a filmmaker, let's be very clear that there are people who are telling me what to do. And there is a hierarchy and a chain, and sometimes it may be my signature, but there is somebody else who's holding my hand. And therefore, a lot of the time, what I do is that I just hold on to the tail of the creative director, and that creative director and his personality and his own creative greed and his own desire to do great work is something that then goes down the line, and I'm very low down that line. So even on Happy Dent, I haven't been to Cannes myself ever. I believe that was something which I did, and yes, it's got an incredible amount of love and due. It got it to the extent where the country owned it. It wasn't anymore, and the world owned it. It wasn't something which came from a particular filmmaker or a particular agency. It became something which was bigger. I remember this is obviously Happy Dent is Prasoon Joshi, so it's McCann, and I remember we released it on a Saturday, and on Monday I went to Ogilvy for another commercial, and when I walked down the corridors of Ogilvy, people stood up and clapped, and therefore it became. I'd never had that happen to me, and I hope it happens again. But the idea that there was an ownership of the work which crossed borders and sort of people. And I think that was one of the big things that happened on Happy Dent, which it became work that the world began to feel proud about. Yeah. So on that front, but a lot of it is all credit due to the client and to Prasoon and the team there. As far as the use of humor is concerned, I think the more ridiculous a thing is, the more real you need to make it. And the more believable you need to make it. If a ridiculous thing is executed, at least that's what I believe. I'm sure there are lots of examples of commercials, certainly some of the work that comes from Thailand, which is ridiculous, but executed also in a ridiculous way, and still it works beautifully. But I don't know whether that loud kind of, there's something there that the Thai commercials can pull off, right? And there is you look at that and you say, whoa, that's really whacked out. That school of acting and everything is all whacked out. Over here, we do have that kind of stuff also. There is all kinds of comedy that I think there is, like it is in the world, obviously. It's not as if there is one kind of comedy, but I have tried very hard over time to understand a country's sense of humor. Like we know that the Brits are, have a certain kind of humor. And that kind of humor, in a way, identifies the nation, right? And you say, hey, that's very British, okay? So, and what we're so different in India, and it's all so chaotic, and there's so many cultures all together, and there's so many regions and states and languages that I tried very hard to try and see. Even now I say, how do I make my advertising Indian? How do I make it rooted? How do I make it culturally piggybacking to who we are, rather than where Latin America is going, or where Britain is going, or where Europe is going, where America is going, or where Thailand is. My gosh, let's copy Thai advertising, okay? Look how wacky they are. And I'm trying to figure out, have we got to a national identity in India which says this work is Indian? And I'm happy to say that even though I have tried, I have not been able to. Yeah. I mean, there is a Bollywood school. I hate that term, but there is a Bollywood school of filmmaking, right? So if Bollywood has been able to do this song, this dance, this color, there's a certain dramatic way of telling, there's a stylization. Why is it that in which case, if the world has understood Indian cinema is of a certain kind, why is it that the world has not understood that Indian advertising is of a certain kind? And I think that that is something which I would love very much to have an Indian identity in advertising. Like there is an Indian identity in feature films, which we're all proud about and which is what people want to do. And they want, the world has embraced that. So we've not yet got to that. I think there is a certain, sometimes westernization. I think there is a certain, sometimes we are not embracing our own, sort of verve about where we want to go with it. I think there is a certain cultural colonization. And I think that cultural colonization where obviously my language has been taken over. And as you can see, my clothing has been taken over. I'm now trying to figure out how to get to an Indian aesthetic rather than a Western aesthetic. And in the work that I do, therefore, I try and see how to make it rooted to Indian culture, to Indian ways of telling, to Indian, how shall I say, some of it is therefore not, it embraces chaos because I believe that even my eyes were culturally colonized. And therefore I began to look at Western art and I began to look at the S-curve and the law of thirds, and all of this colonization now is something which I'm dealing with and trying to escape, because I'm trying to say, and please forgive me while I speak passionately for another 30 seconds about this and not anymore. But the reason I do is because I'm trying to say, if the landscape, let's say in the desert in Rajasthan, looks Indian, and if the farmer there or the person who's there from the village looks like Indian, and if the tree looks like it's Indian, why am I shooting it in a Henry Cartier-Bresson way? I don't understand it. Why am I shooting it in a Wes Anderson way? Why can't I shoot it in an Indian way? Why can't I do it so that, and I believe, and I think this is another line from, maybe again it's T.S. Eliot, but I don't know. So please forgive me if I'm wrong, but the more particular you are, the more universal you will be. And therefore more and more I'm trying to be Indian, and I'm trying to be more and more us, because the more us we are, the more we'll reach out to you, which is what has happened in some of the commercials that you have pointed out, which is Happy Dent or Element, which is again because of Raj Karoop and Creative Land Asia. And it's because of them that I was able to therefore practice it and say, but hey, we have, our beaches are chaotic. The concept of a beach is a Western concept. Yeah.
So, people haven't allowed direct or advertising campaigns to be more Indian? Why do you think that it does revert back to trying to be a bit universal?
Well, first of all, I think that there is a pan-Indian problem, right? We ourselves are dealing with how to reach out from North to South India. Right. So clients are constantly trying to figure out how to be mass. On the other hand, I think that there are language concerns also, because what works in the North versus what works in the South versus the East versus the West. There's also, along with that, what is working internationally last year at Cannes. Right. And what worked there. And that, I think, is a problem that we all face in the industry. Obviously, it's not just India which is dealing with what worked and what got the Cannes Award last year. And therefore, should we do work like that? And I think all of this obviously is there, which is not to say that we haven't yet made great work and it hasn't actually got the recognition that it is, that it has. And you can see yourself that obviously there is a lot of good work that is coming out of India. And a lot of it is, but we don't yet have, like how, let's say, Latin America had a voice. Yeah. British advertising for a while had a voice. American advertising had a voice. Thai advertising has a voice. Japanese advertising has a voice. I don't know whether India yet has a voice. Why does it not have a voice? Because maybe we just have too many voices.
But then Do you think that the reason that Abiden and LMN and man-made machines are successful and broad is because there isn't any voice. There's no dialogue. Like essentially it's a more visually comedic thing that can be interpreted by someone in India, someone in France, someone in Britain, someone in America, because the humour comes from what you're seeing, not what you're hearing. And often that's the discord, obviously, from any cultural thing. If you don't speak the language, obviously, certainly, you can't.
Right.
So that's why I think it kind of crossed over. It became so successful. Anyone could get that, and anyone could understand the humour and admire the kind of filmmaking chops of it, but also just get it as a joke, essentially.
But yes, maybe that is right, and I think it's a good insight. It certainly changes my approach to, therefore, looking at the way that our own work, if one has to do humor and make it sort of generally accepted, but at the same time, I think that those are not the reasons why it was made. But now that you're pointing it out, does that mean that let's look at movies? Why is it that Austin Powers or Zoolander or any movie that a comedy movie that we have loved, which is also so dialogue dependent, and which is not visually dependent in a way, but which has got to do with just the humor of the wackiness or the quirkiness of the Wes Anderson movies or some of the Coen brothers movies? And why is it that they reach out so much across all cultures? Again, is that because we have begun to be colonized about what is good humor? What is good humor? What is bad humor? Or is it just that either it makes you laugh or it doesn't make you laugh, or it makes you smile or it doesn't make you smile? And my next movie, but don't tell anybody in advertising about it, but my next movie I want to make is a comedy, because I've done so much work in advertising which is quirky and which is whimsical and which creates a world that I want to try and see whether I can do that in feature film, and maybe in a year or two, depending, God willing, and the universe allowing me to make it, we can have a further conversation about language, vision, comedy, cultural identity, because these are all things that I'm also yet, these are questions that I have no answers for, that I'm trying to myself in my work try and attempt.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, on a broader point about comedy, do you think now's a good time? We talked before we kind of came on camera about the state of the world and the cities and the countries we live in, about Corona and, the way that made everyone feel, and obviously the terrible deaths that everyone had. But do you think now that despite all that kind of sadness and kind of anxiety, comedy is actually a good thing, that not just films, obviously, but also brands should be embracing humour?
Yes, I think that obviously everybody in advertising is talking about how to make things positive, whether it's comedy or not, but how do you keep things positive? How do you keep things happy? It's something that we most certainly need, just to, because all of us have gone through what we've gone through. Thankfully, we are safe. We are at home. We have food on the table. Even though salaries have been cut, there is some amount of work. We don't know how long we'll last. There is the biggest problem. What we're doing is it's all indefinite. When something happens, that it'll get over 6 months, 1 year, but this is indefinite. The world is in ICU, so to say. And there is a certain sepsis that has crept into all of us. And therefore, anything that makes that experience a little lighter on the spirit, I think is most welcome and I think that is part of the responsibilities. As it is, what has happened is that I think catharsis has been taken away from us, because it's something which, even when we read the newspapers and all, there's no more catharsis, because we have to blank it out, right? Because it's just so sad, and it affects you. And that means the only catharsis that you can have is through movies or through the shows that you're seeing, or sometimes a commercial that makes you cry. And I think that at least that, therefore, whatever that we can do to make you feel better, even if it is tears, so that you can use drama and use this medium that we have been granted and sort of given to allow us to change that feeling. And so in the two, certainly in the two feature films, the last two, the Nirja and Arya now, which is the sort of web series, I have used, it's a tragedy. And I think that though we do want positive stuff, I think even tragedies are fine, because at least then we can cry. We're not crying anymore. I think we've just sort of stopped ourselves from crying. And I think that we do need to have sort of things that make us cry.
Like you say, cathartic.
Yeah.
So look, I'm conscious that I've kept you talking for quite some time.
No, don't worry, Danny. It's absolutely okay as long as you're not getting bored. I'm fine. Don't worry.
Cool. But I wanted to sort of end on a question about aspiring directors again. Back to that, and do you think that with the proliferation of platforms, Netflix, Amazon, web series like you've worked in yourself, avenues for directors to explore, do you think that advertising still represents a great avenue of opportunity for aspiring directors?
So I think if you talk about it being part of a director's journey versus the need for advertising, yes, I think there is going to be a need for advertising. So on that front, I think that because until a new ism comes, we are in a capitalistic society. And even though we have given Mother Earth a holiday for a while, and I would like to give Mother Earth a holiday at least 2 weeks a year, and that's the movement that I want to actually start, which allows us to have a 2-week holiday, not for ourselves. If we can get a 2-week holiday, why can't the world get a 2-week holiday? And then because of climate change and what is happening, and all of that and it's a big, huge cycle that we've got ourselves into, right? Where the food comes from and our own cars and how we travel. And we have no idea how to escape all of this. And then suddenly this has come and has stopped us. And even then, yes, we yet need our food. We yet need the stuff that is coming through us through the systems of capitalism. And one of those systems is, therefore, we need to then tell people that this is what we've made, so that we can then get it out there to be consumed, so that this whole cycle continues. Wow. Ooh. Man, I mean, we need it. I don't know how we're going to escape it. We have heard stories about people going to accept awards about climate change, but they have gone on a plane which leaves behind a carbon footprint, which is, so the contradictions and the irony of this, and how do you escape all of this, and how do we do it so that there is a break in the system while you can't break the system, but there is a holiday in the system for a while, so that we can all recuperate. Yeah. But we do it in a way in which it's conscious, and it's not something which just suddenly comes and slaps us on the face. So yes, I think that because of the kind of system that we belong in the world, advertising will continue. It has to. As far as you being a filmmaker is concerned, I think that there are various steps and various ways that you can be a filmmaker. Whether you can be a filmmaker with advertising, whether you can be a filmmaker as a short filmmaker. The good thing is that, as everybody knows, you can now go out there and just do it. And I think that, therefore, that's not what's going to stop you. There's also platforms to release. I think what's going to stop you is perhaps, again, your own need to earn a living. Right. So much of what we... and I think that's very, very necessary. It's necessary because it means that my son can go to college, and this is needed, right? I can't just be an art filmmaker who does not have money, who's like, and as passionate as I am about filmmaking, I'm so happy that even advertising allows me a living. And I think one of the nice things about, not that we're making, like, I'm not saying that it's great sums of money, etc. We've been at it for a while, and anybody who's been at it for a long while and who's been in the business for a long while, you know that you're here just making sure that everybody knows that we are all responsible together. We're all in the same boat. Nobody's trying to, like, sort of make extra money, less money. It's all fair. So, but given that, it's certainly allowed us a lifestyle. And I think that's the other good thing about being in advertising, is that it does allow you a lifestyle, which is, yes, it may not be the best home in the world, but at least you'll have a home. So, and I think that's a nice thing. It teaches you work ethic. It does keep your bills paid. There is certain passion. I'm passionate about making ad films. So if you're passionate about that, that's lovely, because I am yet passionate about that. I do like the people that I work with. The people that you will find in advertising and in marketing and with clients are people that are of a certain like-mindedness, and I like that. So,
yeah, it's interesting to pick on your point about the climate, and how much responsibility does advertising, if any, does advertising have to try and change people's perception?
Well, can advertising change behavior? Right? I think, can advertising create awareness? And I think one of the biggest problems that we have had is in public service advertising, where people make public service advertising to win awards.
Right.
And I just refuse to do that. I just will not now do any commercial which is a public service commercial to win an award. Because first I want to know, are you kosher? What is the reason that we're doing this? We know in India, advertising has helped reduce polio. And I think as of now, and maybe I'm wrong, but as of now, I think polio has been eradicated because of the work that advertising has done to spread awareness. That's a huge, huge thing. And therefore, can advertising help to spread that awareness? Yes, it can. Can it, provided it's done genuinely, right? And it's not just done for awards, and provided it does reach out in a way, and provided there is an organization that is behind it, that is actually making it, sort of go down all the way to where it matters. Yeah. So yes, it can and that's the other reason that I believe that it can actually change people with the right intentions and with the right, how shall I say, push. Yes, it can.
Do you think people's intentions will change and improve? Maybe, advertising, I guess, doesn't always have the best reputation in terms of what it's trying to do. It's trying to part people with their money, which is fine. It's part of, like you said, capitalism is the world that we live in, generally speaking. So do you think after the global lockdown and after all the things that have gone in the last few months, the industry will have its own sort of moment of clarity that we need to do more to help, the world and whatever element of it that we can?
Yes, I think that what does tend to happen is that a lot of very articulate, bright thinkers are there in advertising. That is the reason why so many organizations come to us to try and see how we can help them with campaigns. Yeah. Some of those campaigns obviously are dodgy. That's fine. Now that's the way it is, and some of it we should not be part of, and that's a personal choice. I think ethics moral ethics are things which are personal. They are not things which are, and therefore it's up to you to decide whether you want to sign up for that or not. But in every, campaign, that if, again, so much of it is dependent on the push, the honesty, the integrity, the reason why, and so much of it is dependent on all of that rather than the case study of it. But so much of it becomes the case study of it. And now there are people who are making case studies so that it convinces you that the campaign was so fantastic because look what we did. And there's a whole industry full of case studies. Oh, come on, not on public service work, please. Let's at least be completely honest and real about that. Let's make that, and therefore that is when I really, really look at credentials, okay? Because the rest of it, I'm here if I ask you to wear a certain pair of jeans, or I ask you to, sort of buy a whatever that, whatever water that you need to buy, then those things are part of a culture which is your choice. I'm not forcing you to do anything. And everybody, I think, knows very well what that is, whether it's a motorcycle or a car or whatever it is. It's good. We are meant to get it out there. However, I think when it comes to stuff, and as long as we're not, I actually, strangely, I do believe in truth in advertising too. I do believe in truth in advertising. So,
yeah.
On those words, which...
Remy, look, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. It's been so insightful and so enlightening and varied. It's so good to sort of hear your opinions and your views about directors and about the world at large, and how the industry is working and should be working. So thank you so much for your time and for taking the time.
All the best to all the directors out there who are struggling, because you have me as competition and I shall be struggling to just get work. And we are yet there trying to just do good work. That's all that we're trying to do.
Great. Thank you, Brad.
Okay. Thank you.